Hello and welcome to Ramble. We are talking about the November 2022 paper 1 from the department, and today we're focusing on question 6.1. Right, finance. 12,000 Rand was invested in a fund that paid interest at some unknown percentage per annum, M, compounded quarterly. After 24 months, the value of the investment was 13,000 Rand 459. 13,459 Rands. Okay, determine the value of M. Okay, so we know that our investments, and we're told they earn compound interest, not simple interest. So we know that we're going to be using our A is equal to P times 1 plus I to the power of N type of formula. The twist here is that the compounding is happening quarterly, not yearly. So, okay, so now let's figure out what we know. We know that the amount we ended up with is 13,459. The amount we started with is 12,000. I is unknown, right? That's the M. And then N, remember the compounding is happening quarterly, so we need to count how many quarters are in 24 months. So 1 quarter has 3 months, so that means we have 8 quarters. Okay. Right, and in fact technically I is whatever M is divided by 4, right? Because M is the per annum, and then each quarter we're going to compound by M divided by 4, because there's 4 quarters in a year. I don't know, over explaining, right? So let's put that into our formula. 13,459 is equal to 12,000 times 1 plus whatever M is divided by 4, and this is 8 quarters. And just to double check ourselves, 24 months is 2 years. There's 4 quarters in 1 year, so in 2 years makes sense that there'd be 8 quarters. The compounding happens 8 times. Okay, so now we need to isolate M, so we can start by dividing by 12,000. Okay, so we'll just have the calculator nearby. Okay, right. So that is 1,12 is equal to 1 plus M over 4 to the 8. Okay, then the next thing we need to get rid of is this to the power of 8. So we're going to take the 8th root on both sides. And because this is an even root, right, technically we'd have to consider positive and negative possibilities. But because we are dealing with finance, we don't need to think about the negative root, right? If you thought about the negative 8th root of this guy, the next step is going to be to minus 1, so then it becomes even more negative. And then we times by 4, it's still negative. So then this M would end up being a negative number. And we know that our interest rate can't be a negative number. So that's why we're not going to consider the negative root, just the positive one. But yeah, as I always emphasize with equations, whenever you have to take an even root, you must justify, at least to yourself, why you aren't considering the positive root or why you aren't considering the negative root, or whether both of them are in fact valid for the context. Right, so we are taking the 8th root. Let's do it. I don't know where to find it. Oh, I found it. Okay, no, what's happening? Oh my goodness, jeez. Okay, is my answer still that number? Yes. Okay, so now I'm saying this must be 8 and this here must be that number. So this is about 1,01 blah blah is equal to 1 plus m over 4. Then we're going to minus 1 on both sides, and we end up with 0,01 is equal to m over 4, right? And then in order to get just the m, we'll times both sides by 4. And we therefore get that m, let's do it to 2 decimal places, is going to be, well, okay, and then, okay, let me do it to 3 decimal places, and I'll explain shortly why. Well, no, not 3 decimal places, 4 decimal places. 0, 5, 7, 8. The reason why I want 4 decimal places is so that when I rewrite it as a percentage, I have 2 decimal places behind the comma. So m is about 5,78%, which is not a great investment, honestly. I think when you invest, should aim yana there for 8, 9, 10%, 11, you know. That makes me happy. Anyway, this is not financial advice. Let's see if the memo agrees. 6.1. Yes, we agree on 5.78. Yeah, okay. Nothing too unusual in how they worked it out. Well, not unusual, but like nothing, different to this approach. So the key thing with these equations is just being able to reverse operations, right? So if that does trip you up often, okay, if you have a situation like this, where, how am I doing? Let's keep it like that, right? Where, for example, in this case, we wanted to make I the subject of the equation, right? If you sometimes have trouble figuring out, am I taking the nth root first? Am I minusing the 1? What am I doing first? One way, and this is something cool that we used to do with my grade 8s once upon a time, was to kind of look at, okay, starting from I, right? I as my input, and my ultimate outcome is an expression that is equal to A. So my ultimate outcome is something that is equal to A, right? The question is, how do I build this side up bit by bit until it eventually becomes this expression which is equal to A? So the first thing we do is we divide by m, right? And that gives us this guy, right? Then the next thing we do is we add 1. So next up, we add 1. So now we have the 1 plus I over m. And then next up, what do? We take this expression and we raise it to the power of n. So raise to, oh yeah, maybe same color is not quite hot. Let's do a different color. Raise to n. So then we end up with 1 plus I over m, now raised to the power of n. Okay, and we're not quite here yet. We're not quite at A yet. Right, and then from there, the piece de resistance is we times by p, right? So we times by p, and we then end up with p times 1 plus I over m to the power of n. Well, golly, okay. Clearly, we need to shrink stuff. Okay. Right, to the power of n, and that finally gives us the expression that is equal to A. right? So if we now want to pretty much undo this chain so that we just have I again, right? So if we want to go backwards, oh, I forgot to, oh, okay, that's not a step, that's just they're equal. Okay, so if we wanted to work backwards from this to I, then we're just going to undo each of these operations, right? So the backwards of timesing by P is dividing by P, and that was our first step, right? Which will then give us this guy, right? And then from there, the reverse of raising to the power of n is, one way to think about it is to raise to 1 over n, right? Or the other way to think about that is taking the nth root of that expression, and that would then give us this guy, and then the reverse over here would be to minus 1, okay? And then finally, the reverse of dividing by m would be 2 times by m, and then you would be back at I, or you would just have I by itself. So if you are feeling stranded at some point, not really figuring out the order of the operations that need to happen, this is an approach that you can take to help yourself out. Okie dokes, let's call it a video and see you next time for another Rambly Dumble.